Hey, everybody, welcome back to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth minded men who want momentum in their business, their family, and their finance get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. We're so glad you're listening in today. My name is Kevin, also known as Wally, and I've got Big A in the house ready to bring the heat. Ready to bring
Come on,
the heat,
Wally.
Big A?
I'm always ready to bring the heat. If I'm awake, I'm ready to go. Man, you doing good?
Yeah, man. Had a good,
Yeah.
we're, man, I don't even know when this is going to be aired, probably a couple weeks, but we're almost headed into the last month here of, if we're not already in June, we're headed into the last month of the first half of 2023, which
I
is
know it's
crazy.
crazy.
I
I know. I
know.
feel like we just started.
Yeah.
But here we are, halfway through. It's been a good year so far, and I'm excited about the second half. So, sunshiny in Nashville. So, I love the sunshine.
I will take the sunshine for
I
sure.
know. And I hate cold weather. One of these days, we're going to be doing this. You're going to see an ocean behind me as we do these interviews instead of my ISI backdrop. I need to be where it's warm.
Yeah. Well,
And
we
it's
could
not
plan on
warm
that.
here during winter, so we'll plan on it. We'll plan on it.
Hey, question for you. Uh, a lot of times we, it's easy for us when we get together as guys in just one-on-one or in a small group of guys, whether it's a mastermind group or not. It's easy to talk about the things that are going poorly. Like we're looking for help and we're looking for feedback and we do all that.
Hmm.
But there are times when we have successes and we have moments that we discover significance in our lives. And how do you celebrate that?
It's hard. It's a lot easier to talk about the things that are not going well rather than celebrate. You know, you don't ever want anybody to think, hey, this guy's boasting, but
Yeah.
we always kind of present an environment in ISI that's conducive to celebration because those guys are on the journey with you. They're trying to, see what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I think it's okay. You know, it's funny you said this because not long ago, one of our members sold his business and it was for life changing money. I mean, it was crazy money. And they went right to the next win like he did. I said, wait a minute. But did y'all hear what he just said? This is generational money that this guy just sold his business for. We need to have some applause, there you go, some high fives virtually. Let's do something. But then the guy got embarrassed. He was like, he didn't know how to receive that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to celebrate, but I do think we need to, right?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes in our families, you can't really celebrate with some family members. It's hard. I wonder why that
Mhm.
is too, right? You've got brothers and sisters and your mom and dad and, cousins. You're very apprehensive about celebrating, especially financial wins,
Yeah.
right? You're like,
Yeah.
hey, it feels awkward in doing that. So, like, what do you do specifically? Like, when you do celebrate, what does that even look like for you?
Well, first of all, I am with you that we should celebrate. I think too often, just in general, in our even in our daily lives of business owners and operators, and we just
Mm.
don't take a minute to celebrate, even for ourselves, let alone like whole different level. We're not going to talk about it on this podcast episode today, but your team needs to see you celebrating. They
Yeah.
need to be part of that with you
Mhm.
in your business when you have those wins. But personally, when I have the wins, I didn't know how to celebrate for a long time. Like it was no one to celebrate with. To your point,
Mm.
it's very difficult to, be transparent on here, right? So it's very difficult to go to a brother or sister to go to Bible study at church or
Mm.
whatever the case is, and you got this group of guys, and you're like, hey, I just had an
Sold a
EBITDA or net
business.
profit of $300,000 this year as I'm building
Right,
my
right,
business, on the
right.
way, and like what in the world,
Mm.
or yeah, man, like so when I sold my business um, back in 2019, and it was significant. So it was close to eight figures. It was pretty significant. And when that event happened, I remember um, the guys in my mastermind group. I remember my wife just saying, "What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to commemorate this moment?" And it is still, even in that event, was so easy to be like, well, I got other things to accomplish and you're just going to keep moving on. But I really got pressed of how do I celebrate well, this really generational change moment in my life and in my family's life. And so I got all kinds of ideas. It was great. People had all kinds of crazy, fun ideas. One was like, "Hey, all your family's coming home for Christmas, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, everybody's coming home. Like, just surprise them and like, rent a private jet and go to Mexico for the weekend or something." And that'd be a crazy thing to do, right? Fun, crazy thing to do. So I ended up all the ideas. There was lots of them. That was probably the craziest one, but there was lots of ideas. And I actually went to my family and I was like, my daughters and my son-in-laws, and was like, "Hey, we want to celebrate this as a family well. And what's some ideas that you guys have? What would be meaningful and important to you?" And you know what they came back with pretty much was, "Hey, we still want to come home for Christmas, but let's let's like create moments and have experiences that maybe we wouldn't normally do." Whether it was the types of food that we ate. So we upscaled our food. We had some pretty good seafood, and we had some prime rib, and we went out into the community and did some things that we normally wouldn't do to celebrate. And we spent time talking about the future and what this might enable us to do. What God was, the blessing that He gave us. Like, what does that mean? And that was super super impactful.
Mm.
And then my wife, bless her heart, she's like, you really need something to celebrate, like something to not reward yourself, but just have fun with it. It's so hard to do that.
You don't even like to say the word reward
I
yourself.
know
Like
it's
you're
so
pushing
hard.
back now. We're talking about
Oh,
celebrating, and you can't even say I'm going to reward myself.
yeah, that's hard. It's hard. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
into all the reasons why that feels hard, but it does sometimes. And so yeah, she said, "Hey, you need to do something." And so I did. I went out and my gift to myself, and it was really to us, our family, was we got a bought a new Mustang convertible GTO, and a GT5 wasn't a GTO, but that's a whole different brand
Well, I
of,
got to stop you, like, because we're being transparent here.
yeah.
Like you said, that was really a gift for my family. Like, you can't even say, Kevin, you deserve this for yourself. This is a Mustang you've always wanted.
You're
And
right.
you're saying that I got it for the family. And I would doubt very seriously if many family members ride or have ever ridden in it, if not a single time.
They
But,
have actually. So the
oh,
kids have
good.
taken it
Okay,
out
good.
on dates. My
Okay,
brother,
good.
my brother borrowed it this weekend and took his wife out for a day.
Cool. Cool.
And yeah, so I hear what you're saying though. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're right. Like I do. I mean, it was bigger than me. The reward was bigger than me. Um, but yeah, you're right. It's, man, I don't. Yeah, ooh, that's a tough one. How about you? What about you?
Yeah,
Okay, enough of
yeah.
me
I'm
deflection.
not I'm not real good at it either, but
Mm,
yeah, Robin's a big encourager for me to celebrate and do things for myself.
mm,
I love to fish, and so we had a pretty good year, past couple of years, and I've been wanting a new boat. And so she said, "You're going to buy that boat," and I'm like, "Nah, I'm not going to." She goes, "If I'm going to be pissed if you don't buy that boat," and so I'm like, "Okay." So I did. I bought a new Ranger boat, and so it was pretty cool. I've wanted one for a long time, and you've been out in it, so
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
pretty
it's
cool
nice.
boat.
It's
So it's
great.
fun. And so outside of that, we do trips. Like when we celebrate a big
Mm,
event, Robin and I love to cruise, and so I don't know if we sell a business or if we do something that's really kind of above and beyond what the normal course of business is, that or milestones. We do pretty big things. Also, it's usually a cruise. We've been on numbers of cruises. We like that. We're not saying this today at all to boast. We're talking about what we do to reward ourselves. And so, for big anniversaries, we're kind of between big anniversaries. We got
mm,
number 43 coming up in a couple of weeks. We're probably not going to do anything real spectacular. We got some other family things going on right now, but 45 will be another big one for us. They're in
right on.
5 year increments. And so we'll plan probably another big cruise. And so that's a week. 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, go out on a cruise and celebrate that. But I'm like you, and I've been pounding on you a little bit. It's hard for me to do it as well. It's like, we could do so much more with the money. We could invest it in this or bless somebody else. But you kind of feel guilty almost. You're kind of like, golly, do we really need to do this? But the bottom line is we should. We should do things to reward ourselves. We all work hard. All the listeners that are listening to us today, if you haven't celebrated, go out, get your spouse, do something cool, go celebrate, and it motivates you and energizes you for the next thing. So, bottom line, yes, we should celebrate. So, you determine what that is for you.
Agreed. I'm with you. Hey, speaking about other people and those we have around us, and I just said that I do things for other people as far as like reward for my family and stuff, right?
Right.
We're going to talk about other people today when it comes to delegation,
Mm,
and I'm interested to know
mm.
just from a we think about delegation most of the time we think of that at work, and so many small business owners, executives listening to this podcast, and delegation, especially I think early on in business. That's been my experience and my observation with other guys too, is that it can be very difficult, very, very challenging. When you started in business, can you think back that far? I mean, you got to
What
go.
do you mean?
I don't know.
Can
I'm
I
just
think
asking.
back that far?
I'm just
Well,
asking.
sure, I can. I'm
All
not
right,
that
all right.
old.
When
You
you
know.
first started back in business, before you started getting team members, and then you started
Right,
getting team members,
right.
employees, was delegation difficult in the beginning for you?
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. Yeah, because I didn't think anybody could do it as good as me.
Hmm.
I was like, hey, I started this business. Kevin, I did something very unsafe and I don't recommend it. We were in the retail business, our first business. I was just turned 19 years old. And I worked 18 months by myself in that business. I mean, we were open to the public, and I was like doing stock work, going and getting things, waiting on customers. And I'm like, man, first of all, that wasn't safe. But second of all, I didn't have the money. It was like, I don't have the resources to go out and hire somebody. And then when I did hire somebody, I was like, I'll just do it myself. And then I was like, what are these people doing here? It's like, I'm not giving them anything to do. And I was pretty stubborn. And to my credit, though, if you'll say that is to my credit, I didn't really have anybody teach me. I had to figure it out. And
Mm.
so I wasn't a good teacher. Like I didn't want to take the time to teach others. And so eventually, the employees I started hiring is like, hey, do you want me to do anything? Or like, what am I doing? And I'm like, you're right, you're right. And so at first it was pretty tough. And I think the biggest obstacle for me has always been they're not going to do it as good as I
Mm.
would do it. It sounds arrogant. I don't mean it to be arrogant, but it was like I know exactly how I want it to be done, and they're not going to do it that way. And so I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. When I first started in business, you do all the things,
Right.
and then I did have some training and some teaching that I picked up from, it was probably 5-6 years in, and started learning some things from people like Entre Leadership and otherwise, and the one thing, not the one thing, the E Myth was one of the first things I read early on, and that has a lot to do with process systems, and of course delegations required in that.
See, I'm so much older than you. None of that stuff was a
It didn't
thing.
exist back then.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
So
true
I'm
leadership.
grateful for those
Yeah,
tools.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Right.
am. And they were very helpful in the early days of
Mm,
doing it, but it was still hard.
mhm.
I think I think that the number one thing that helped me start to turn the corner was, I'd like to hear from you too, like what that was for you. Like what was one of your first experiences? I'll give you a minute to think about it. What was one of your first experiences of where you really truly delegated something,
Mm.
and what that was like? But for me, it was a testing process. So not testing other people, but testing the process and the system. So when I actually delegated something for the first time, I had somebody. His name was Travis. He was he was my IT director at the company that I owned and built, and he was with me a long time. And he used to say this thing that used to make me mad, because he wasn't wrong. he used to, I'd say, I give excuses and reasons for things of, why we can't do something, or, we needed to do something, or we're going to stop doing something. And sometimes that involved people related to things that had delegated to them and whatnot. And he'd come back and be like, okay, like the bottom line is, Kevin, are we, are we losing customers because of it? And I'm like, dang, like that's a really good, like at the end of the day, are we losing customers because of it? And so that was ended up being like my litmus test, in the sense that, okay, when I delegated something, what was the outcome? Right. At the end of the day, when I delegated something out, were customers happy? Were they unhappy? Were they staying? Were they leaving? Because a lot of times we think of change as bad, and a lot of customers a lot of times think of change as bad, and some of
Mm,
it is, right?
mm.
But if it's communicated properly. Anyway, so that was kind of like my turning point, probably in 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. What was it for you? Did you have a moment where you were like,
Yeah, yeah, it's a very defining moment. Of course, we opened that first store when I was 19, and then uh, when I turned 23, we had paid it off. It was like a 10-year loan, and we paid it off in like 4 years.
hmm,
And I was like, man, I can do this again. But then I got scared. I said, I can't do it again because we're in retail, right? We're open to the public. And if I'm going to do it again, I can't be in two locations at one time. And my brother worked for me at that time. And so we had Aaron's Jewelry and Loan down in East Nashville, right outside of Nashville. And Woodbine Loan Company came up for sale on Knowlesville Road, out on the south side of town. And so I went out there and made him an offer and bought the store. And then I went like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? Like I can't be in both locations. So my little brother, I put him out there to manage the store. And I called him every morning. Did you do this? Did you do this?
hmm,
Did you do this? He's like, dude, I got this. I've been there for years. Like I know what I'm doing. And then same thing. We paid it off in 3 or 4 years and bought another one, Broadway, corner Fifth and Broad. I don't know if I've ever told you that or not, but there was
no?
Broadway Pawn Shop, corner Fifth and Broad. I bought it, and then a month later, I bought Rose Loan Company that was across the street next to Ernest Tubb Record Shop. It was right diagonally across the street. So we had two on Broadway. And every time I had to put managers in these stores, and two of the stores didn't have managers. I had to put them in there. One of them, I talked the help into staying. Miss Jones was her name. Boy, she was Sergeant Carter. Like it became I worked for her is what I felt
That's right.
like. But I
That's
was
how it
like,
should
man,
be when you
yeah,
delegate, right?
she'd been there forever. And she was like, hey, you can tell me all this fancy stuff, but I'm going to do it the way I've always done it. Like I've been here like 30 years. I'm going to do it this way. And it was a very profitable store, very well run. This lady was really sharp. But I finally had to learn to let go. I watched Barbara Cochran on the Shark Tank one night where she dismissed a good opportunity because she said she could tell in the demeanor of the person that they would never be able to delegate. And I don't know how she picked up on that in
Hmm,
the midst of that conversation, but she said a person that really scales, that really grows, that really knows how to grow a successful business learns how to delegate quickly. And then she said it only has to be 80% as good as you. And if you can do it 80% as good as you, it's good enough. I thought back, it's an overused analogy, but Chick fil A, they have 3,000 locations. I guarantee you, Truett Cathy could operate the customers better than anybody, but he wouldn't have 3,000. Well, he doesn't anymore. Dan Cathy, or now his son, this is like another generation. But they've learned how to delegate well. And that was a defining moment for me. Yeah, when I had a new location.
hmm, that's good. Delegating uh, is hard for me. You mentioned it's hard for you because you want to micromanage.
Yeah, yeah,
Delegating is hard for me, I think, on the opposite end of the spectrum, probably because our personalities are so
mhm,
opposite. That just makes sense.
yeah,
But for me, my downfall in delegating is not that I want to micromanage it. My downfall is that I just want to say it once and just like expect that it's going to be like they're just going to do a good job and it's all going to work out.
yeah,
And I've been caught, a couple times in a situation where have that stark reality that that's not the right approach.
Well, look at all the
Um,
years of experience that you've got. You know, you can't make an assumption they're going to do
yeah,
it as good as you, or even hear it the first time. And I know we've had this conversation about
yeah,
this very thing. It's just I understand though, you've got very high expectations and you've got very high standards, which makes it more difficult on the people that work for you because they know that and they're like, man, am I going to measure up? Am I going to be able to take that? Which really is one of the things that I think about in delegating is the employee development. We've got to take that into consideration because when employees are delegated responsibilities, they've got an opportunity to learn new skills and grow and develop professionally. And if we don't give them that opportunity, they're never going to develop. And
hmm
so I think so with that being said, like how many times are you willing to share and teach, or are they allowed to do it 50% as good as you and then 70% as good as you? And then, or what is the threshold for you in how well it's done?
yeah. I think it goes back to I've learned this over time from experience and from observing others is that if you hire, you go back to good to great. So they talk about, the right
Mhm.
seat on the bus kind of a thing, get
Mhm.
the right person, the right seat on the bus. I have a different, I think in this past year, I come up with this new analogy and it's probably stupid, but I'm like, forget about the bus. I don't want my business to be a bus. So like, I want it to be race cars.
There
So
you
let's
go.
let's find the right people and put them in the right race car in the right seat, and
Mm,
let's let them run, man. Let's let them,
mm,
get that thing going and help us hit our targets and what we want to accomplish. But getting the right people
mm.
is really key. And
Yeah.
so
Do you think that most skills can be learned though?
skills can be learned, yes,
Okay.
but if you go back and if you try to delegate to someone who doesn't, what I say, have the right attitude or have the right aptitude,
Hmm.
then you're going to have a challenge. Like the skills
Hmm.
may not be able to be learned if those two ingredients, attitude
Mm,
and aptitude, are not present. Attitude can be, yeah, and they can be an awesome, fun person, right? They can be super friendly, but
mm,
if the aptitude for the role that they're in, if they're not able to develop that in a way that you need it to be developed for
mm.
that role, for that purpose, then I think that's just going to be an uphill battle. So having someone who has attitude, good attitude, and good aptitude for the role you've got them in,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
adds a lot of confidence when you go to delegate.
You know what I've seen in people though, there's a sense of empowerment that it gives them
Yeah.
when you do delegate because they have a sense of ownership. There's a sense of responsibility for their work, and if they don't feel that, you got the wrong person, right?
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
need to get rid of them. But I remember when I started delegating, like to my brother, he was younger than me, and when I gave him that manager's role. There was a sense of empowerment that came over him like I hadn't seen. Like he grew leaps and bounds as a result of that because he knew then he had the ownership, he had the responsibility for the work. And I think that also increased his job satisfaction. And I saw a huge increase in his motivation. Like it really did wonders for him in just empowering him through that delegation.
Yeah, that's really good. And getting that, if you get the right person in the seat that you need them to be in, they have the aptitude, they have the
Mm,
attitude, and they've got the aptitude, and then hopefully you've hired them, to your point, to empower them, because we want to try to hire people that are more skilled in their role than I would be.
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
I think often I found myself with that reality is that if I do the things first, if I hire correctly, if I empower correctly, I can't think of a time where that didn't work out well. And I wasn't actually like, wow, like
mm.
shame on me that I thought, to your point, that I could still do a better job than so and so.
I found
Right.
out oftentimes they do a better job.
Exactly.
A
Exactly.
better,
But
if you never empowered them or gave them an opportunity, of course, you wouldn't know it.
yeah, I want to, I want to bring up, since we're talking about empowerment and we're talking about delegation, I've had an opportunity lately this past couple of years to do some one-on-one coaching with integrators.
Mhm.
So if you're familiar with like Traction or Rocket Fuel or Visionary Integrator, um, EOS, if you're familiar with that, there's other business models as well that have that visionary second in command. That's the wrong word, but that's really what they are, kind of a person or a business model. And
Mhm.
so if you're familiar with that visionary integrator type situation, I've been coaching um, a few integrators, which normally the business owner is the one that gets the coaching and they get all the help and all that, and the person that's kind of in the middle running interference and filtering between doesn't get a lot. And so had the opportunity to do some coaching with them, and the number one thing that has been an obstacle in those situations is that the visionary or the owner can't really delegate to that integrator. They just can't give it up.
Mm.
And it just creates so many challenges and so many problems in them trying to build a business model that's going to give them a system and something for them to actually help propel their business forward. And I know in a future we were talking just before we got on this, in this future episode, we're going to talk about plateauing in your business. So be looking for that one, because that's what happens is that
You know what the visionary doesn't see though, and man, I want to encourage you if you're listening to us now and you are the visionary. There's just such a difference in your time management, the things that you need to be working on. It really gives you a better sense of efficiency and productivity when you listen to that integrator. I know that I've had to turn over stuff to you, Kevin, that you're doing an amazing job for the integration of view from the top. And it's allowed me a bandwidth that I didn't have to be more productive with my time management. And it's made me personally more efficient and more productive. Plus, I like it because I've distributed the workload. I don't have to do all that. And then also, it's the responsibility. I'm like, dude, that's on you. Like, you go figure this thing out,
that's
right?
right. I'm
And so,
accountable now. Yeah.
yeah, you're accountable. And so, there's so many benefits to listening to that integrator and let them take that responsibility so that we can be better time managers.
Yeah. And that could be owner, that could be visionary integrator. It could be owner. Maybe you don't have that model in your business. It could be owner and business manager,
Mm,
right? Like whatever it is, just learn to delegate appropriately with was that trust but verify? Is that
right,
right? Is
right.
that the
Sure,
right phrase? Like
sure.
that's important to follow up and make sure
You know
things
what
are
it does too, though, is that you are a creative person. Some integrators may not be, but when they take that role of that responsibility, you delegate it out. It kind of boosts the creativity in other members of the team. It's not just left for me to think through, like, what are we going to do? What's this next new project? Now it's a team. It's a team effort,
mm,
and it's also a trust building tool. Like, now the whole team is trusting more one another, right, rather than looking at one person for doing all these things. And so I've gotten a lot of great ideas from Brooke and from you and other team members that we've got. When you're willing to let the reins out just a little bit, don't hold your cards too close to the vest. There's just so many things that I was unaware of when I started delegating. I wasn't aware of as many benefits as we've received as a result of it.
yeah. I think having the business, like the idea of just delegating without a business model to
Mm.
support that is very difficult, because you, as a visionary, you can't see like, well, how's that going to work? Like you
No,
can't see how it's going to work.
no.
And so having a business model, whether that's, my business on purpose, Scott Beebe's got a great the EOS, like whatever it is, like there's something that you need in your business that's going to help
Mm,
create structure
mm,
and create a thing that everybody can look at and go, okay, if we follow this game of business, like this model we've set up,
mhm.
that from a visionary or an owner perspective, you're going to be able to delegate much more rapidly and
Yeah,
confidently than you would.
yeah,
And so you mentioned something a minute ago about how it's freed you up. It's given
yeah.
you freedom. What how does someone who's sitting here right going, yeah, guys, like I hear you, you live in a must live in some utopia world, because that's not my world. How do they start a mind shift change? Like, what? How do we tackle that? How? Because that's where it is. It's stuck. Most of it. I'm not
It
saying there's
is.
not work involved. I'm not saying
We're
there's
in our
not
own
people to
heads,
hire.
right?
Yeah, but the reality is, if we think we can't, we can't.
No. So here's the thing for me is doling a little bit out, right? Not the whole thing at one time. You can't just go say, oh, here's 10 things, go do those things. I think that would be foolish. But when you dole it out and they execute well, or maybe not as well as you, but you see they're competent and they're capable, and then you dole a little bit more out. So it's the way I do everything, right? It's slowly. It's not just, okay, just go do whatever. I think that's poor management. So I think to see if they're competent and they're capable of doing those things, it may be my competence, but not my zone of genius. And I think that where I should be operating is in my zone of genius, not just in my competence. I feel like I can figure it out. I wish that I had read the book Who Not How years ago, right?
Mm.
Because it really capitalizes on delegation. Dan Sullivan did a really good job with that book. And I recommend it highly, by the way. So I go grab a copy of Who Not How. Um, there's certain things that we just don't need to know how to do. We need the right person to do it, right? And so there's people that are very qualified to go out and run a business. They're visionaries or they're integrators, but we don't need to know how to do everything because the speed of execution really slows down when you think you've got to do every single thing. So it's hard, especially for somebody like myself that was, a decade plus, maybe even 15 years into doing things the way I wanted it done until I was able to relinquish some of my roles and my responsibilities, and hearing other people that's very qualified that's been in business to say, hey, it's okay if it's 80%. It doesn't have to be 100%. They're not going to manage it just like you. That's if you're wanting to scale your business. If you're just wanting a lifestyle business and you're happy with not having any employees or team members, then okay, just do it your way. But if you're really wanting to take your business to the next level to where you can allocate some of these things to other people, you can delegate out some of the. Here's the other thing is the exercise that we went through years ago was what gives me energy and what are the things that drain me. And so I just simply wrote down everything that I do. And then I said, this sucks the life out of me. Like, I got to figure out who to give this to. Or these are the things that energize me. Wally, you and I have even talked about different things in this business that drain you. And I'm like, give it to me. Like, I want to do that because it energizes me. So I say the first step is to go through that exercise, write down everything you do, put an up arrow to the things that really give you energy, a down arrow to the things that drain you, and then say what are the things on that list that only I can do. And there are a handful of things that are like, no, I'm going to do this, and right now I'm not confident someone else could do these things, and then try to delegate everything else. They say it's eliminate it, delegate it, or automate it. And so that's kind of the rule that we live by here.
That's good. We're also right now as a leadership team in the middle of exploring The Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni, and we've read the book and we've done the evaluations, and we actually have just a quick kind of pre-announcement. You won't hear it for probably another month or so, but we do have a certified working genius consultant coming to one of our master classes that we're putting on for everyone here in August. So be listening for that. That's going to be coming up here soon, and that's going to be a fantastic when I say master class, it's like a workshop, 90-minute workshop, virtual workshop.
And
So
while we do those for free, there's no
we do.
charge for those. And so be sure to look for that and sign up. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, we do. I want to talking about mindset, and maybe this is more of a practical tip, something that I've learned over the years. And I almost don't want to say this because I think that maybe it's like one of those Jedi tricks that you're going to like know that I do now and be like, oh man, I see what you're doing here.
Mm,
Okay, so here it is. I just did a coaching call before we did our interview with an integrator, someone who wants to be an integrator,
hmm
and one of the challenges that we have inside business with leaders. So you've got an owner, you got someone that you want to delegate something to, is the lack of communication. We've already established that, right? Either like for me, it's, I want to say it once, I don't want to follow up, and other times it's like we want to give it to them, but then we want to pull it back from them and want to micromanage it and all that. Here's the thing: to to have effectual change, whether it's delegating up, delegating down, which is what we normally do, right? We would say we delegate down the org chart, pretty much is how most people
Mhm.
do it.
Mhm.
Whole different podcast on organizational chart versus accountability chart. We'll get to that a
Mhm.
different day, but there's benefits to both. But we typically historically conventionally think about delegating down. Well, there's actually an opportunity for those listening today that maybe aren't the owners, but they're working in a business where they have leadership responsibilities and they can actually learn to delegate up. And here's how you do it. So the way you do it is you people say, well, we're going to try this. So I'm going to have someone I'm going to delegate something to someone. We're going to try this. Forget about using the word try. Like we don't try anything. We commit to something for a period of time and then we evaluate it.
Mm.
That has a whole different ring.
That's good.
Even for you, like delegating to someone that you're building your team, and it's
True.
even that first person that you hired, the first person that I hired, that
Right.
we're like, okay, now we got to delegate this. If we would have sat down and said, okay, if I'd have had the knowledge then to sit down with them and to say, okay, look, here's what it's going to look like. Here's why you're going to do it because you're awesome. And we've hired you for this. I have good attitude. You've got great aptitude. You're going to do an amazing job. Here's what success looks like for you doing this thing. And we're not just going to try this, like we're going to commit to it because it matters. And here's why it matters. Like here's our core values, here's our vision, here's how the thing points into this. And then can you come along with me? Can we commit to this for 6 months? And during that time, once a month, we're going to meet and we're going to review how is this going? We're going to ask each other questions. Well, that's a whole different thing
Yeah. Yeah.
than like, hey, why don't you take this over?
Yeah. The key
Both
is the
sides.
communication ongoing,
Totally.
right? And one of the strengths that we have as an organization is that we have weekly calls, every team member with the person they're reporting to, lengthy conversation. Where do you see frustration? What challenges are you having? How are you dealing? I love this part of it. It's like, personally, how are you doing? What are the challenges that you're experiencing? It's that weekly communication that keeps us from going too long letting things get off in the weeds. And so I love that about the way we're communicating.
Yeah. So just kind of finish up here. Do you think that, I mean, it's kind of a silly question to say, does delegation work? And somebody who hasn't experienced it yet or struggling
Yeah.
with it right now may not
They're
have that
scared.
confidence.
Yeah,
They
they're
are.
scared right now, right? They like, I don't know it's getting done if I do it, and they're never going to grow. That's the thing. You've got to look at it. Okay, if you want to be a solopreneur, you want to go out there and do it yourself, always 100%. Uh,
You want to own a
you're
job.
probably, yeah, yeah. It's a job, right? That's what it is. You have a
You
high
own a
paying
business or you own a
job.
job. Like you get
They
to
have a
choose.
job if that's what they're doing. And so, yeah, you just got to loosen up, try it a little bit, do some of the things that we've taught during this episode, and go slow. You don't have to go fast, but
Yeah. It's going to take time, right? Like this is not going to be solved tomorrow. It's going to take some work. But man, if you can even yourself like envision what it could look like
yeah,
by delegating appropriately, whether it's the
mm,
time you get back, the mental freedom you get back, the ability now you have to do something in your day that maybe you've been putting off. It might be as simple as
yeah.
physical activity, right? You've been putting that off and now you're a little overweight and your wife's looking at you going, huh,
You're not
you
looking so
know?
good anymore.
Like, yeah,
Wally, there's a little hack that I've taught other coaching clients when I'm coaching business owners. One is that you're like you said earlier, man, I've got to teach it. I only want to teach it one time and then I expect them to get it. Well, that's probably not reality.
right.
They're probably not going to get it. So, what I'm teaching people to do is to get on Zoom and share your screen if you need to. You can teach it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. Save it as an MP4 file label it to whatever training, and that person can watch that 20 times if they need to, right? But you only had to train them once. And so it really, really helps you. There was a formula that said that if you save an hour, it's the 30x rule. You should be willing to spend 30 hours to eliminate a 1 hour a day or 1 hour a week task. So if something normally takes you an hour to do, you should be willing to invest 30 hours to train somebody else. Now that is off of your plate forever, and you've had
Mhm.
30 hours invested in doing it. Now, if you do the math, I wasn't smart enough to do this, but I saw the formula. If you do the math annually, it's 1,150% annual return. If you were
Wow.
looking at it from the form of dollars versus time, who wouldn't exchange, right, to get 1,150% return? That's what it is. 1 hour invested or 30 hours invested for a 1 hour task.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great climbing exercise on our way to view from the top, right? Like we want
Right.
that view from the top. We've got to look at the numbers, evaluate our people, look at our time, what matters most. I mean, all those things. And that's the climb that we're all in. And man, I'm excited. Hopefully you guys that are listening today, man, take this and do something with it. Don't just listen,
Right.
do something with it.
Go out and spend a little time delegating, taking your business to the next level. So, Wally, I enjoyed being with you today. It's been a great time
Same.
talking about delegation.
Hey, as we close out here, just real quick, I mentioned just at the very end of our conversation today, I mentioned something about climbing to get to view from the top. We have a biweekly, sometimes weekly, newsletter called The Climb. And you're going to love this thing. So it talks about how to gain momentum and how to gain accountability in your business and your family and your finances, and really helping you on the climb to get to view from the top. So please go check that out at viewfromthetop.com/climb. That's viewfromthetop.com/climb. And we'll see you on the way up the mountain.